As part of our series covering evaluations of GIZ's rural development portfolio, we are looking today at three interrelated projects in Central America. The projects try to reconcile forest protection on the one side with the necessity to income generation on the other side. One project had been located in Honduras, one in Nicaragua, and the third one was on a regional level located. All had been funded by Germany's BMZ and Holland's GIZ. I'm speaking now to the two independent evaluators of the projects. Klaus-Peter, you were assessing the synergies of the technical assistance instruments. Can you tell us about the common aims of the projects and the three-level framework that had been used?
I will focus now more to the common aims of the intervention in Nicaragua and Honduras, which had one basic aim, which was to contribute to reducing the rates of deforestation in the biosphere, with two intervention areas. One was offering legal and conceptual framework and setting up local structures in order to ensure a proper management of natural resources by local populations. And the second point was supporting this protection of natural resources with alternatives for income generation, mainly through a value chain approach.
Okay, Stefan, which methodology did you apply for the evaluations? Was there anything critical in terms of impact assessment?
We combined different methods, which we call a mixed method approach, which allows us to triangulate, let's say, the results of the different instruments we were applying. So, for instance, we were conducting interviews, and we were also conducting some surveys with the target groups and also the comparison groups to get some kind of to measure the difference between, let's say, the situation of the people who have been the beneficiaries of the project and who were not. What we did this time, I think what is also kind of innovation to our approach is that we also combine these, let's say, social scientific methods with more natural science methods. So we're also doing some biodiversity analysis. We're also doing an analysis of different, chemical factors of the soil, which have which would have benefited from the intervention. I think what was particularly critical to the impact measurement was that we were lacking baseline data. I think this is quite common in many development or technical cooperation projects, that even if you have the possibility to conduct a comparison group design and collecting data from people who have not been beneficiaries, still you cannot really tell why is that difference happening. So what is the counterfactual? What would have happened if there would have been no intervention? So this was kind of a little bit of a critical aspect we were tackling with, at the one side, as I just mentioned before, with these more like natural science methods, but also we were asking retrospective questions, so people asking particularly how did you assess the situation before the intervention has taken place. And this was kind of a challenge in that regard.
Now tell me, what is the added benefit of doing 2-3 evaluations in one go? I have the report here, it's about 200 pages long. Certainly not that it gets more condensed.
Of course, I mean, it's a hell of a lot of data. I mean, it's massive, data collections going on, and we have, I don't know how many interviews and questionnaires which have been filled out. And but I think the benefit, the particular benefit of combining projects which are comparable more or less with regard to their impact, the intended impacts, is that we were able to develop a joint impact model, and from that to get more information about the synergies of the different instruments that have been applied and the activities of the project. And also, of course, there's some cost saving potential in it, because you reduce your travel costs, because you only have to fly once and you travel within the region. And as I said at the beginning, the database gets bigger. and then you have probably more reliable data.
In the abstract that we will place with the interview on the website, there's mentioning of 4 key results. Can you summarize these results and maybe point to the most important finding from your perspective?
As in both countries, national structures, regional structures are too weak in order to really assure proper protection. So you have to involve people in order to get the participation out of their own interest to protect forests that they feel are their own. That's the basic principle how both projects work. And both projects have developed quite effective mechanisms. You mentioned income generation as one of the key aims of the project, and they have developed quite interesting value chain. One point out of forestry itself, so the value chains for wood or for non-wood products, value chains for agroforestry like cacao and coffee. If you want to express it by numbers, you have an estimation of around 3,300 families in Nicaragua that benefit from those value chains. In Honduras, you have more than 4,000 workplaces that directly come out of forestry as it has been established at the local level. So in both countries, you still have quite huge amounts of illegal use of wood, of broadening of their agricultural border that still threatens the biosphere reserve. But you clearly can tell that deforestation is much lower than it would have been without the intervention of the project. And what you could call the key zones of the biosphere reserve, they are very well protected, particularly in Honduras.
Yeah, great. So there was certainly impact, and that's very important. The original conceptualization of any project is obviously a key determinant for success or failure of a project. And even though that's usually not part of the evaluation, because that focuses on implementation, since we're here with the Global Donor Platform, I would like to know, is there anything that maybe you thought could have been done differently from the conceptualization onset and that we could relay as a message to donors?
In fact, there is not that much that could or should have been done differently. We evaluated the projects according to general criteria that once have been established by IPAD as quality criteria for rural development projects. And both projects are evaluated very positively on the conceptual side, taking into account that they are working under very difficult framework conditions in both countries. So the two projects, as they have applied the respective multi-level approaches, have taken into account very well these governance structures, establishing like parallel capacities, also at regional levels, local levels, which somehow could substitute the governance weaknesses of the national governments. Also with a very strong role, stronger than usual, of GIZ technical assistance at these local levels. So up to a certain point, in Honduras, for example, they even might have substituted some functions which could have been government functions, but which was necessary and could have been considered more intensely from the beginning of the project. Is the question of the sustainability of capacity development at the local level, where both projects had a very broad set of interventions, but in the beginning maybe not focusing sufficiently on setting up entrepreneurial skills at the local level. So we have been talking from the beginning about sustainable techniques for sustainable management of natural resources, of developing certain activities for income generations, but really setting up local cooperatives as enterprises as something that has been focused more in the second or third phase of the projects, and has been, from our point of view, a very decisive element in comparing the more successful and the less successful cooperatives, and any kind of value chains that we have been looking at.
Since we're now talking about donors, this was also a project that was sponsored by 2 donors. But there's also other donors in the field, anywhere in these development scenarios. In your document from the evaluation, you also cover under the area efficiency donor harmonization as a point to look at. What was the most critical success factor there?
There are not that many donors in each one of the countries present. However, as I mentioned in the very beginning, they have a very strong role in keeping the protection of the biosphere reserves on the political agenda. So they are not many players, but they are key players. Cooperation, as we have seen it, there have been some cooperations on the operational level, doing even some local projects in close coordination. But for us, the most important point has been the harmonizing of positions, of concepts at the national level. So, speaking with one voice of the donor community in order to advocate the importance of directing resources to the protection. This is a very important point, as we have national institutions that with lots of fluctuations of political decision makers and also personnel at the technical level, and thus having the donor community as a kind of stabilizing factor. Speaking about efficiency, is a key critical success factor is the harmonization of technical assistance at the one side and financial instruments on the other side. So everywhere where we are talking about capacity building at the local level, value chains have set up, or local organizations have set up, that need investment and that need to build some structures, and for that they need financing mechanisms. And at some moments, this harmonization of technical and financial instruments has not been that close. And this might be a point where the donor community still could create more synergy.
Okay, thank you very much.